All right, hello everybody. My name is Illia Nyzhnyk. I'm here ready to teach you all about how to prepare like a pro, where I show you rather rare sidelines in the openings that will hopefully help you throw your opponents off their comfort zone. Welcome, chatters. We have quite an audience today in the auditorium, so I'm happy to see so many people joining in. So without further ado, Nemo raid? What? No way. We just got raided at the beginning of the stream. Okay. Well, hello raiders. Thanks, Nemo. I hope you had a good poker stream. I know Nemo has been playing some poker lately. Hopefully that went well. But yeah, no poker here, unfortunately, just chess. So hopefully you guys are down for that. Have 5 games to show you today, most of which are mine. I'm known for my rather poor opening knowledge, but what I do know how to do very well is how to play sidelines and throw my opponents off their usual game. So here it comes. The first game was played a couple of years back against Kevin Su. Rating difference is in there, so I decided to take it easy. Usually against lower-rated opponents, I would play Sicilian defense, but here I decided that going into more of a positional route by playing Caro-Kann would be best. So here it comes, especially after I realized that my opponent plays advanced Caro, where if white is not careful, and this is what we are about to see, if white is not careful, it's actually a piece of cake for white to get in trouble immediately. So here comes main line of advanced Caro defense, and I like playing the following sideline, right? So I go ahead and play knight e7, and if currently white doesn't react and makes a normal looking move like castle, right? That's the kind of move that most people would make without really thinking twice about it, right? Castles the king, hides the king, brings the rook over. So very logical move. Actually, I think castling here is already it wouldn't be an inaccuracy, but it's a kind of move that allows black to play c5 right away. Once again, it feels surreal that black is able to play c5 here immediately, as looks like maybe white can just go ahead and take on c5, which did happen in the game. After c5, if white knows theory well, they usually play c4, kind of trying to punish black king for overstaying in the center. Right? The move c4 is played. Oops, yeah, my wonderful arrow drawing skills are kicking in. So white usually plays c4 in order to trade away as many central pawns as possible, and therefore expose the black king. Right? This is a very effective method of playing against someone who has delayed the development and delayed castling. So a sample line here to not go too deeply into the opening specifics. Right? So this is a sample line where, in the end of the day, black should be doing relatively okayish. And while here it seems that black is down material, black is down indeed, is down a pawn right now, but the e5 pawn is not going to survive for too much longer. And once again, this is something I suggest doing. As there was a game here. This is me referencing a game between Maxim Vashilagraf versus Alireza Firouzja back from 2021. They played this game in Veikanze. Once again, not something very normal, right? Because black is currently playing down a pawn, but there is something going very well for black, and that is bishop pair and bishops being extremely good, right? Both bishops are located in the center, firing away, and this feels like some level of compensation. Although once again, it's arguable whether it's enough or not. But this would have been a completely different game. My opponent didn't know about the c4. He went ahead and made a very obvious move, right, which is just to capture the pawn at c5. I see the pawn is hanging. I take it. Completely understandable. Can't blame him for that. So I went ahead and played knight ec6. And Caro-Kann defense is the kind of opening where the biggest issue that black faces usually is how to. It's an ability to develop the pieces to proper squares, right? Because of the pawn on e5, the pawn on e5 is very annoying, right? Taking away a whole bunch of important squares that black usually uses to develop their pieces to. And here, that's the biggest challenge that black usually faces. So the point of playing c5 quickly is to not only immediately put pressure against white center, but to also allow black to properly get their pieces out, right? So this knight is going from g8 to c6. This knight is eventually going to go to d7. And if some of you guys are familiar with French defense, then you would know that this is a very, very typical placement for the knights in advanced French defense. With the only difference that in French defense, black would usually have the bishop on f5 on c8, right? And that's kind of, that would be the problem for French defense players, because the bishop is stuck on c8 here. It's no longer an issue. The bishop is out. So as long as we can basically get our pieces out, recapture the missing pawn, we're going to have an improved version of French defense. And that's what makes it quite a bit, quite dangerous for white, because if, once again, white doesn't play this accurately, they will be in trouble. Okay, so c4 was played by white. By the way, if any of you guys in the auditorium or in the chat have any questions, please feel free to stop me, and we'll go over whatever questions you may have. So c4 was played. So my opponent does have a correct idea. It's just it wasn't done quick enough, right? So my opponent is indeed trying to open up the center by playing c4, but at this point it's not a big deal, because I'm getting ready to take on c5. Once I take on c5, my king is escaping towards the king side, and I have no issues whatsoever. So I took on c4, and here knight a3 would have been a better choice, right? So my opponent ended up taking back on c4, and that's a bit too slow, right? Because knight a3 allows white's knight to get itself over to d6, and d6 is currently an outpost. It would be a bit annoying for black to deal with this. So for example, here I have a sample line. After bishop c5, bishops get traded, and white knight is going to be trying to get to d6. I'm not quite sure why it doesn't go to d6 immediately. Oh, that's probably because there's bishop g4, and now white might begin experiencing issues with the e5 pawn. So that's why in this line white tried queen c1, knight d3. This is once again me following a game between Yuri Krivorichko and Camille Mitton, I think, from Lublin 2012. And while this game is quite old, what happened in it is still approved by an engine, if you will, leading into a position like this, where yes, the knight is in an outpost, but black has a very, very powerful bishop on d5 that's kind of holding black's position together, and black is currently getting ready to perform a breakthrough of a4. The game ended in a draw, so it looks like either advantage didn't really lead to anything for both sides. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
Why did black play b takes c6 instead of bishop takes c6?
So that's probably because black wanted to give themselves an additional opportunity to play on the queen side. Right? With bishop c6, it looks very solid, but if you think about what active plans does black have? And I feel like there aren't that many, right? Because white is currently almost controlling both open files. For the knight on d6 makes it close to impossible for black to contest the c file, and here white would likely try to kick the bishop out and then place the rook on c7, which could be quite annoying. So by taking back with the pawn, black leaves himself with a possibility of counterplay on the queen side. Plus the bishop on d5 is once again holding everything together, just giving himself an option of controlling the open file. That's why. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, once again, knight on d6 is very annoying. So despite how good the bishop is, the knight just by itself ties black's hands together somewhat. So I don't blame black for not being able to win this. Looking at the evaluation, the engine just says it's complete equality. But once again, I would prefer black here because I like bishops working together with rooks. That's just my personal preference. And here, being able to see an active plan on the queen side, that kind of makes me happy, while white doesn't really have much going for them except for the knight on d6. So knight e3 is the correct way of playing this, but bishop takes c4 is a bit too slow, and that's my opponent's first inaccuracy. It doesn't really lose anything on the spot, but it just makes it harder for white to finish development. After I obviously take on c5 and keep following the plan, right? So bishops get traded. My opponent goes knight c3, and here, unlike in the knight a3 line, right, where the knight is going to go to c6 through c4, and there is not much I can do to stop it, here white is having a similar idea, which I fortunately can't stop right now, right? So after knight c3, I went ahead and played a6, just to make sure the knight does not end up on d6, right? White getting their knight to d6 is one of their common plans for these structures, because that's one of one of the only ways for white to utilize the strengths of the pawn on e5. Right? Makes it easier to control d6. The white piece is likely to be the most powerful when it comes to controlling the outpost on d6, and that's why the knight usually tries to go there. Now it's no longer possible. So a6, queen e2, and this is the point where white begins experiencing problems for the first time, right? Looks like the position is pretty usual, right? So if we just go ahead and castle, white would most likely play something like rook d1, queen e7, and except for the square on d6, black doesn't really have any problems, right? White may end up placing the rook here, but we need to be careful because there might be some tactics. It doesn't seem like any of them work right now. Now e5, there's queen takes e5, but still there is something white can hope for, right? Because once again, white is controlling the outpost in d6, and that allows them to control the d file, which in turn brought me to the whole point, right? Do I need to, what can I do to try and make sure that I don't have to deal with this problem of whatever piece is going to come to d6, right? Is there anything I can do right now to discourage white from getting this idea through? What do you guys think? While it may seem like castle is an obvious move, right? Because I want to castle anyway, so why wouldn't I just do it? What really plays is in my favor right now is that I can castle pretty much any time. There is hardly anything white can do to stop me, right? Usually a bishop would be the piece for white to use, but there is no dark squared bishop in the game right now. And for this reason, I'm quite flexible, right? I can include a move or two before I castle. I will castle eventually, right? I want to castle. I don't want my king to stay in the center, plus I want the rook on h8 to join in. But as of right now, I may have a better idea. What is it?
Bishop d3 and queen d3?
Let's take a look. Bishop d3. It's definitely an interesting plan, right? Takes, and then you want to take, and okay, so I see people in the chat are also saying bishop d3. So this trade will oftentimes favor black. So I agree that this is probably a good idea overall, because with the trade of pieces, first of all, you no longer have to castle, right? If you manage to trade away queens, you can save time by keeping the king in the center, just playing king e7. Rooks are connected. The weakness of the d6 square can no longer be felt as much, right? Because it actually doesn't really matter which, I mean, it's unfair to say that it doesn't matter. If white could bring the knight over to d6, it would matter. But first of all, rook can't come to d6 that easily because now knight e5 is actually, I keep second guessing myself, yeah? This is probably not a, it's probably on the K endgame, right? But it's nothing special. I feel like if anyone is trying to play for a win here, it's going to be white because black has an additional island on e6. But once again, black doesn't have to go for this. Black can just play it safely and get to trade stuff. And the unique part about this endgame is that as long as there are some pieces on the board, so it's going to be an endgame no matter what, right? We are about to enter the trading phase. Either all rooks or most of the rooks are going to get traded away on the d file. But what ends up happening is that the pawn on e5, right? That's the pawn that usually benefits white, right? It takes away the squares that black pieces usually go to. It gives white more space, but in the endgame, however, it becomes a burden. Like this pawn, like if let's just to show you guys what ends up happening. Like this pawn is too far advanced. If white wants to defend it, white would have to. Actually, I'm not sure. Like there's knight d3. That's also a threat. So I guess knight f4, and then here, as you can see. There's a major difference between white's pieces and black's pieces, and that is that black's pieces are attacking and white's pieces are defending, and there isn't much white can do, right? The only way for white to play this on is to either bring the king to e4, right? That's going to take some time. That's pretty much it, right? Because nothing else works. The knights are unable to move, otherwise white loses the pawn, and so the pawn becomes a burden. White would need to try and hold it, right? While black is not forced to do anything. Black can move the knights if they want to. Black can play b5 and trying to expand on the queen side. Like so black will never be in danger, while white has to always be careful. And that's why trading into the endgame is almost never going to be in white's favor, unless after the trades they end up winning something by force, which is clearly not the case here. So yeah, this is good. This is good, but not as good as the other option. Black has a much stronger idea here.
I have a question.
Yep.
If black goes b5, do you just play knight takes b5?
I think so. Yeah, I think there was. Yeah, this would have been too good to be true. You know, like. Yeah. If white has to go back. Bishop takes b5. Yeah, I think this is what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
Is there a move to defend both? No, I don't think so. Yeah, it's just he just wins the piece back immediately. There's no move to defend both knights. Right. Yeah, it would be amazing. It would be fantastic if you could just push the bishop back, and now now we can even take it if you want to, but no. Thanks for the opportunity to play against you, Ilya. Oh, no problem. My pleasure. Come again. I'm happy to play anytime. Okay, so queen e2, a much stronger option. Yeah, Julian.
So, in that line, bishop d3 takes. Why did we not play? So you played.
We played rook d1, I think.
D1?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't black take on e2 and go knight d7?
We didn't do that. Okay, I think maybe here.
Yeah, and then like king e7 here just to.
King e7. Yeah. So, but you're not threatening to take, so I still have that as an option, right?
Okay.
It's not good. Like you can tell that this is not great, right? Because white is white is defending. Like white's knights are worse than black's in this case, and I feel like it's the kind of advantage that's hard to convert for black. But I've managed to win positions like these. It takes time. Like it takes time, and it takes like a couple more helping attempts from your opponent's side. But it's possible to win this. You have to like wait for more mistakes, for more weakening moves from your opponent, and eventually, you will be able to go for something tangible. Because right now it's just an intangible advantage of your pieces being slightly better than your opponents, because your pieces are attacking. Your pieces are not bound to staying in a certain place, right? White cannot move the knights because then they lose the pawn. Black can move the knights. Yes, if black moves the knight, then white can move as well, right? But it's not the end of the world, right? If white loses the pawn here, it's pretty much the end of the world because we're talking about an endgame. Okay. Something more immediate, something more concrete, something that gives black maybe a tangible advantage here. Okay, so I see knight d4 being suggested in the chat. I think knight d4 might be a little bit dubious because not quite sure what we are trying to get with this. We can't win the e5. We can go all the way to the left, right? But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we are achieving, and also I don't like the fact that we are making it easier for white to play f4. Yeah, like right now f4 is a blunder, right? So it's bishop g4. So it's questionable, but we can definitely. Okay, so I see some other suggestion of queen c7. So what queen c7 does really, right? It takes the queen away from the open file. It begins applying more pressure against e5. I like it, but ask yourself this: under what circumstance can you win the e5 pawn? Because if you just try to keep attacking it, white will always have enough defenders, right? But there is one condition under which you can actually end up winning the e5. What condition is that? What? Yes, white has a key defender, right? That's a knight on f3. Right now, bishop g4 is a very strong resource because we are forcefully removing one of the key defenders of the e5 pawn. And there isn't actually much white can do to stop the loss of the said e5 pawn. My opponent tried queen e3, targeting the c5, but unfortunately for him it doesn't help. Because as we take on f3, now queen c5 would lose to
Queen g5?
Yeah, queen g5, pinning the g2, g3, and now we can just, we could try to calculate the queen h5. Actually, it doesn't work. Now as I'm looking at it, it probably just doesn't work, right? Because white has a bishop f1 defending against checkmate. So it's better to keep it simple, right? It's better to just go ahead and pick up the e5 pawn and veer up a pawn here, with white having a bunch of weaknesses on the king side. So after bishop f3, my opponent realized that he can't take on c5. He went ahead and took on a 3 back with a pawn, which and now actually this wouldn't be that bad, right? But the problem, the major problem that white is currently facing is that the king side is weak and the pawn in e5 is still not quite all that safe. It would have been possible for white to defend the e5 if we just go knight d7, then f4 comes in, and despite how weak white's king side is, there's no immediate way for black to take advantage of it, right? Once again, I prefer bishops over knights. This position is semi-open, so I feel like, especially after black castles kingside, white might have some annoyances. Okay, so I see some suggestions here for this position. So Mokhtar, so over here you're saying queen h4 is not possible, right? Because the knight is still hanging. So the queen h4 otherwise would have been a great move, but your knight is under attack. Yeah, okay, so I see the right answer. Virash got it. Are people in the auditorium seeing it? Yeah, yes, queen d4. So kind of weird, because it may seem like we want to keep the pieces on the board to give ourselves a better shot at winning the pawn on e5, but queen d4 it's just a beginning of a small tactic. It's a small tactical puzzle. Queen d4 is a double attack, right? Attacking both the c4 bishop and the e5 pawn. If white moves the bishop, obviously, what is there to discuss, right? We just go ahead, pick up the e5 and veer up a pawn in a very superior endgame, as white now has double pawns on the f file. And the only other reasonable alternative for white is to take on d4 and go for this endgame. Now, if white could have played f4, everything would have been okay. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Unfortunately for white, there is a very simple tactic. Knights are powerful. Knights are jumpy, very strong pieces. And sorry?
b5?
b5 is, I would say, well, you're gonna, wait, no, you're not gonna win anything. I have this, right?
But knight f3d2,
yeah, knight f3d2, right? Yeah, just jumping all around, forking the rook and the bishop, and the game, well, would have ended, right? I would have won at least an exchange, and that should be enough to finish it off. Bravo, everyone in the chat is very smart today. Well done. So f4 not working out, right? So white needs to find a different way of, I guess, defending the f3 while also keeping the f4 option open. That's why my opponent went with bishop e2, right? Protecting the f3 pawn, getting ready to play f4. We know, right? It's very obvious that white is trying to play f4 because white is uncomfortable having the weakness on e5. Now, since we know it, what move makes the most sense right now from black's perspective? Because we know what white is trying to do. We have a perfect way of stopping that. How? Bravo. Bravo. g5, Virash got it. Auditorium people got it. g5, exactly. Just, stop f4. Now make it impossible, right? f4 doesn't come. If f4 doesn't happen, e5, pretty much dead. So after rook d1, knight c6, quite literally dead. By the way, the only way to defend e5 would be to have the rook on the e-file, and that's not happening, right? Oh, I guess this rook could have happened, but I get why my opponent didn't do this because, well, actually, first of all, it doesn't help, yeah, because we just go back, and then we have knight d3. It's a triple attack. So plus it looks very ugly. Like if white is offered to make a next move, like I could just let's say play king e7 and ask white politely, okay, what you want to do next? How are you gonna move your pieces around? And it's actually physically impossible with the f1 rook being blocked like this. So it's understandable why white didn't go for this. And the rook f1 obviously runs into a fork. So over here, my opponent played rook d1, gave up a pawn. So knight d7 is a quality of life move because knight e5 would allow some counterplay, right? So there is knight d5, there is knight b5. Annoying, right? That we have to calculate. We are lazy. We don't want to calculate. We want to have a simple position, simple endgame where we up a pawn, and then we can just cruise in until we win. And that's only possible if we take care of all the major issues. So knight d7 is a must. Feels a bit annoying because there is knight e4, and the knight is going to come into d6, also attacking the g5. Fortunately, knight g5 is not a threat, right? Because after my move king e7, knight g5 loses the piece to this, right? thanks to the g file being exposed. So after king e7, my opponent played king f1. I guess knight d6 could have been tried, but it feels actually pointless, because I would just take on e5, and then I have rook h to b8, and I'm picking up the b2 as well, right? So knight moves away probably to c5. I pick up the b2 with double attack. If the bishop takes on a6, I can take on f3 first with a check. I can take on a2. Yes, it's just a singular pawn, but white has a very, very, very bad pawn structure on the king side, so chances are that they will be losing more pawns in the near future. And my opponent played this a bit too passively. He played king f1, h6. Now, once again, it probably would be advisable for him to actually try something like knight c5 and knight d6, because what he did was just, he tried pushing the pawns, but if my pieces get reorganized, now actually I'm beginning to threaten the trades, right? Trading into the endgame where I'm going to be up a pawn, and this is exactly what happened. We traded and traded even more. My knight got to d4. Now I have two amazing knights in the center, hitting f3, hitting b5. My opponent tried rook c5, which didn't help, as I have now have rook a1, and actually I think very soon we're going to see my opponent's pieces in a kind of a zugzwang, over here, where nothing gets to move. The rook is trapped, the bishop is trapped, knight has to stay on c3 in order to defend the bishop, and I have multiple threats, such as king c8 is trapping the rook, rook c1, kicking the knight out and picking up the bishop. So over here, after f4, not sure why I didn't go king c8. King c8 feels a bit more natural, since, well, maybe I just wanted to win a piece and not an exchange, as after rook takes d7, I only win an exchange. So here I played rook c1, and my opponent resigned, because picking up either a knight or a bishop, depending on which piece remains under attack. So this is my first example. Took us a while to get through this, but sometimes if people just in certain openings, if people just close their eyes and make all the obvious moves with either color, it can backfire, right? So there exist sidelines where you're forcing your opponent to respect your plans, right? Whenever you play with white, you may sometimes think that, let me just put pieces on generic positions and it's going to be okay. As you can see, it's not always the case, because sometimes not realizing what your opponent's true intentions are may lead to quick losses like this one. Half an hour, huh? Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this game. I feel like this game is probably, first of all, it's a bit more complex, and I like it more than the other two. So, not because it's my game, but well, you'll see. So this is my game against Grandmaster Illia Nyzhnyk, back from 2022, I think. It was played during National Open, and I've used to have English opening as my path line. We used to play it a lot because, once again, it's an easy opening to remember, and kind of semi-transposes into most of the d4 structures. So in this case, as you guys can see, we are beginning this as a 4 knights in English, which can once again literally transpose to what happened in the game. I played d4 first, and after my opponent traded the pawn, knight c6, knight c3, we did end up transposing into the 4 knights. In this position, as far as I remember, d5 is actually one of the ways for black to semi-equalize. It requires some prior knowledge, but it's something black can do if they're looking to play a quote-unquote boring game where most likely it's going to be a draw. But my opponent, fortunately, was in a fighting mode, so he went ahead and played e6, which opens up the dark squared bishop. This position, to someone who is not really that prepared with white pieces here, this would seem a little bit dangerous, because after g3, which at that time was not a very popular move, but now I feel like everybody just knows what's going on here after g3. So back at that time, it was not very clear that white is actually doing okay here, because the main line here looks like the following. Black usually goes knight e5, beginning to attack immediately, and white has to create a bunch of weaknesses in his position by playing e4. So e4, usually when you fan carry your bishop, but usually when you make an intentional decision to fan carry your bishop, you no longer have to move the e pawn, right? It's believed to be pointless, right? If you play g3, your bishop gets out here, then you don't really need to move your e pawn, because normally you would do that to get your bishop out to e2 or d3. Here, it's a must, because after knight e5, that's literally the only way for you to defend the pawn on c4. And after bishop b4, which seems to be applying even more pressure, now if you want to finish developing, we would have to play bishop g2, which once again costs us the pawn. If we go bishop e2, then why in the world would we play g3, plus this ends up costing us the pawn on e4, right? So this looks quite scary. Fortunately for white, they have the move queen e2. It's weird. Once again, when I saw this for the first time, I was like, okay, no way I'm gonna play something like this with white. Position looks very ugly. Like it feels like I'm behind in development, even though, yeah, I am, right? If black just castles, white is going to be behind in development. But the idea here is that as soon as white plays f4, black pieces will be getting pushed back, right? So with every move white makes, black pieces get further and further back until eventually white fully catches up on development. And over here, I think I'm referencing a game from back in 2023 between Samuel Savian and Benjamin Bok, where Samuel was better and eventually did. And wait, if I'm referencing the game from 2023, I think this was National Open 2023. Okay, my apologies. So white has a bishop pair. The position is close, but white has a very, very fast attack on the king side with pawns moving in immediately. So that's, but once again, this doesn't happen in the game. This is what one of the main lines looks like. But fortunately for me, once again, my opponent wasn't quite prepared that well. Although the move he made also makes a lot of sense. So he played the move bishop b4, which immediately attempts to pin the knight, gets the bishop out to b4. Right? There isn't really much I should be doing against that, because black could take immediately, which breaks white's pawn structure. But the problem with doing this is that the dark squares, and specifically the d6 square, gets very, very weak. And what ends up happening if white gets full control of that square is that black's queen side begins lagging behind, right? So black would usually have the pawn in d6 here, or sometimes it would even go to d5, by the way, just like in the game. Here, black would have to develop this way, and sometimes it could be inconvenient. So this is why my opponent went ahead and played d5 immediately, kind of claiming that, oh, well, you don't have time for this, right? And he's right, by the way. I don't really have time to don't have time to capture the pawn. Sorry, over here he took back with a knight, while he could have definitely taken back with a pawn. Where taking a d5 right now would be a mistake, right? So if I want to win a pawn, I can. It's not worth it though, because after bishop h3, I can no longer castle, and black has a bishop pair advantage, while also being up in development. So taking up on d5 is not a good idea, and I don't have time to do this. So after knight d5, I quickly realized that and played the move short castle, which is a positional sacrifice. Yeah?
I have a really stupid question.
Why?
So after bishop h3, why can't white go queen e4 check and then g4?
Queen e4. I guess. Wait. You also wait. No. Then e7 g4.
As greedy as possible.
Maybe that's why I should probably just castle as black. Yeah, and then I was hoping that I can stop you from castling, but yeah, this is maybe like h5. Like it could get really dynamic though, right? If I go h5, you'll probably just take on h5. I don't know.
Bishop e3 maybe.
Bishop e3. Okay, let's try to make a stupid move, maybe. queen b5. Not sure why exactly I'm making the queen b5. How about this one? No, but then there's bishop d4. Oh, b4 is hanging. Okay, well, that wouldn't be the first time I blundered the piece in one move. Yeah, as we know, Julie and I played a couple of practice games, and seeing pieces hanging wasn't easy for me in those. Yeah. Okay. So how about we just take it easy and just castle here. Yeah, the castling allows white to castle, but it still feels like chat is not allowed to ask good questions. Well, yeah, you guys can ask questions. I pay attention to the chat as well. so far I've been the one asking questions, but yeah, if you guys feel like you want to go back to something, just let me know the move number, and we'll go over it again.
Instead of castle, can I throw in bishop e3 first and then castle?
So here.
Yeah, like I understand that black has the bishop pair, but queen a6, so you can even take on c3, take on e2. Okay, so that's why I have to castle.
I feel like I'm gonna cheat a little bit. This is 0 0 0. Okay, so if this is 0 0 0, actually bishop e6 somehow is the strongest move. Although actually, no, you know what? I probably agree. It kind of launches your queen on the moving spree here. I'm not sure why queen e4 wasn't an option. Queen e4 makes a lot more. Oh, it wants to go queen a6, and why? It says black is slightly better here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a bishop pair, and this having and this being an open position, I guess. Combined, those two factors combined make it okay for black. And it just felt unnatural. It's just having my king exposed, and yeah, I'm up a pawn, but I always preach about non. Yeah.
I was going to ask, if you go back to the position where you played bishop h3 and then g4.
So bishop h3. Bishop h3 is just not good.
Sorry, queen e4 check.
Yeah, queen e4, knight e7, and g4 is not a move here supposedly. Bishop e3 has white with a big advantage somehow, but g4.
Never mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, g4 is just unfazed. Boom.
Oh, I didn't see
This is also good. Like honestly, this is a plus 0.2 for white.
Why is it old?
Because we have F3 king F2.
No,
Uh,
how is black surviving?
f3, f5, yeah. And now if g5 is just f4, I guess, and the bishop comes out, yeah. And if gf, rook e8. Now it's just equal. Here it takes. Here. Oh, bishop. Oh my God. Whoa. Oh, who said sacrificing your pieces? Oh, maiden 6, by the way. Let's go. Oh, wait, yeah, because king g4 and e5. Yeah. No. It's yeah. 3 pieces more than enough to checkmate here.
So that's what G4 is.
Well, yeah, but okay, I was getting overly optimistic for black. It's not that bad for white. It felt unnatural. I didn't want to have the extra pawn and have my king side so open and having to play against bishop pair. I was like, no, I'm okay. So yeah, that was basically the reasoning. I thought I was smarter than this, but that's literally all there is to it. FM Michigan Eagle claims that he has seen all this. We will believe that, right? We will believe that lie. Okay. So
Sure.
we will deliberately believe that lie. Right. So yeah, I went ahead and offered my opponent to just take the pawn, right? So I castled short, essentially claiming is that if my opponent does decide to take on c3 here, which was a choice, for sure. Then after bishop e3, there's actually a couple of very quick ways for black to just lose this outright. Let's say a logical looking move like queen a6 loses, because we just play chess, right? We go rook c1, and then we play chess until we don't. We take on c6, we play knight c5, we play queen d6, and we shake hands and we go home, because there is no defense against queen c6 or bishop c6. And that's all working because black still hasn't castled, so all hail the dynamic chess. All hail the attacking play style. Yeah. It works very nicely until it doesn't. Until you follow Ilya's advice, you give up half of your set and then you lose because you have nothing to play with. So after bishop e3, queen d8 is an obvious choice, right? Just up a pawn, let's trade. Yeah. Rook c1. Taking on d1 right now is a grave mistake because it just loses a piece immediately. Right? Takes the double attack. So black needs to start with bishop f6, and after rook takes c6, b takes, bishop takes c6, bishop d7, takes. It doesn't seem like it's all that bad, but supposedly black can no longer castle. So despite having a bishop pair, yeah, I know bishop pair, Ilya, what have you done? Yeah, but the king is in the center, okay? Like, you guys can say whatever you want, but yeah?
I like this position too, but I was actually wondering why I didn't play bishop c5 right away, like instead of
Taking on c6?
Instead of rook c1. Why not bishop c5 here?
Oh, okay. So you wanna go like you wanna be like the superhero, right? So white already given up the pawn. They're like, oh, okay, I'm invincible. But Julian goes one step further and says, oh, you can keep taking pieces.
Take and go F6.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
F6, rook d1.
Yeah, I don't know. We can cheat. Yeah, this is winning for white. Wait.
No excuse me.
So supposedly, yeah. So bishop c5 is good enough to make a draw. According to the engine, I don't know. Yeah, I don't like this for black either way. Like whatever black does here, I hate it. But apparently, no. No, this could be a draw, but now black can actually keep trying with queen b5. Yeah, but here we go knight c5, king f7. I'm cheating. I'm using the engine. Like I can't. I'm sorry. I can't calculate any of this, guys. This is just way beyond me. Okay. Like in the game originally, I was only planning to give up a pawn and nothing more, nothing less. But here, like, I'm being pushed to my limits, so I don't like that. I'm using the engine.
Michigan Eagle would have seen it though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Obviously. Michigan Eagle is yeah, is a hero. Legal cheating, yeah. And I don't know what's going on here. Apparently this is 0, 0, 0. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me how. Baby tonight, we're beautiful now. Rook c1, knight. Okay, this is lost for white now because just the knight gets out, so white has to play bishop c5 here, trapping the knight. And rook.
Rook b2 instead of rook b1? Or
Rook b2, I guess it gives black just too much activity. Yeah, rook d8 and then f5 and then rook d1. So as soon as your bishop moves away, you're toast. Yeah, so 0, 0, 0. Believe me, it's true. I have the power of the machine with me, you know. I have the force, okay? Power of the force. Okay, so my opponent was like, nope, I'm not doing that, and that's the correct approach, you know. You don't want to be taking pawns like c3 while half of your pieces are still undeveloped. So bishop e7 was played. I played bishop e3. So here I would love to develop an attack all at the same time. So every move I make from now on involved an attack of some sort. So here I'm being nice to my opponent, offering the queen trade, which is not really me being nice, because after the queen trade did happen, black's position is still surprisingly difficult. So the main issue, once again, is development of the queenside pieces. Developing in the most obvious way possible, which is like what my opponent did, is going to lead to nothing good. So let me demonstrate. So bishop d7, right? Everybody would make this move, right? It develops the bishop. I go a4, and the plan of e4 is just to try and keep the pawn on b7 for as long as possible, right? I want this pawn on b7, because if it stays in b7, what ends up happening is that the knight is completely stuck on c6. It has nowhere to go. And this is why my opponent was immediately got impatient and was like, no, how about I solve the problem of the b7 pawn immediately, maybe by playing bishop c6 next move, right? Let's trade the bishop pair. I was like, okay, well, try it now. So bishop c6 now leads to Ilya being very happy because it's a bishop pair advantage. Woohoo! And after rook b1, the king can try to stay in the center, but once again, black's completely paralyzed. You see, this knight is on the way. If this knight leaves, if this knight attempts to move somewhere, my rook is going to infiltrate on b7. So here, once again, black does not have a way to consolidate the pieces, right? The knight is always going to stay on d8, and black rooks will always be disconnected. So the position is just horrible. Obviously, white would still need to win, so I feel like the plan like f4, f5 would make a lot of sense. Or c4, d4, d5, trying to open things up in the center and punish the king for being there, you know. Plus 2.5, by the way. Would you guys believe it? Just because of how misplaced black pieces are. I should stop. This is I should stop using the engine. It's becoming a bad habit. Anyway, 95, right? So immediately hitting the b7 once again. Rook c8. So rook c8 is a pretty desperate attempt if you think about it, because yeah, in this line, right, by the way, here supposedly instead of knight b7, I had a stronger move order, which is bishop takes a7, and now if rook takes c3, rook f b1. It was very difficult to understand this because the end position, the end result is the same. It's just that I didn't see my opponent's resource, right? So this would be very similar to what happened in the game, but in the game, I took on b7 first, and after this capture, my opponent has a very strong move, bishop to c8. So here, if black just castles, my pawn actually cannot be stopped. It was very nice. I looked at this, I was like, oh wait, am I just completely winning now? My pawn just runs all the way down, but no, there's bishop c8, which essentially forces me to go into the opposite color bishop endgame. I saw this position in my calculations, and that's how many moves is that? So that beginning from beginning from here, right? This is move number 16. All the way until move 20. That's 4 moves into the future, right? So this is me on move 4 in my calculations. I thought that this position is winning for me before. So I saw bishop c8, right? And I was like, okay, so this endgame should be winning as long as one thing and one thing only happens. If my a4 pawn is gonna get to a6 while black rook is still on a7, I will play bishop b7 and that kills the rook, right? So if my pawn is on a6, my bishop gets to b7, the rook is dead. The rook on a7 is dead. My opponent is going to be forced to play down a rook, and I will win off of that, right? So here my goal was to make sure the rook stays on a7, and I thought that I can do it on time, but I can't. So I played a5. If black just castles, right? If black just castles, boom, it's done. Bishop b7, a6, the rook is dead, right? So that's my whole idea. I'm just trying to kill the rook by having that piece set up. My opponent says, no, how about I put the bishops there, right? So he goes ahead and plays rook c7. If the bishop is stuck on a7, it's actually not that bad, right? If you think about it, the bishop is going to be quite a good defender, blocking my passed pawn. So obviously that wasn't part of my plan, so I went ahead and played rook c1. Apparently, rook c1 is a mistake, which made perfect sense to me, because what I'm trying to do is, if black takes, then they have nothing to stop my pawn from advancing, right? So I just win off of that. And if black plays something like bishop c5 here, then I have d4, right? And this is more likely than not, this is just going to be a winning rook endgame for me. I have 2 passed pawns, so I was like, okay, there's no way this is not winning, so let's do it. But supposedly the engine is unfazed, and the engine says that, how about you just play bishop a6 here, and then you play d4. So that's very critical, right? Because bishop c5 currently is impossible because of rook b8 and the rook falls. So black would have to move the king away somewhere, and then I play d4, and apparently now black will have no choice but to put the rook on a7, because if they don't, I go bishop b7 and my pawn promotes, right? Only because black bishop is unable to get to a7 on time. So I didn't really think about that. I was like, I saw rook c1, I was very happy. But then there's king d8, right? So king d8 begins hitting the bishop. I played a6, couldn't play a6. At first I thought I'm winning with a6, but then I realized that black can just take, and now I'm lost, right? Because black is making it on time. And if I just try a7, then there's rook a8, or there is rook takes c1 and king d7, and black is always going to be making it on time. So I remember I was up like 40 minutes in the clock at some point, but then I got here, and then I started wasting time, and I realized, oh wait, I don't have the win I thought I have. So I played bishop a6, and here bishop c5. Bishop c5 is not good for some reason. Let me see why. Because it would make a lot of sense for black to just play bishop c5, right? And somehow it's not ideal. I don't remember why. Maybe because of just this. And now there's never going to be a bishop a7, right? Because bishop a7 is going to run into this, and rook b7 just wins. So for some reason, black doesn't want to play bishop c5 here immediately, and my opponent played bishop d6, which doesn't help. Like, this move just doesn't help black. And instead, black should have played bishop f6, as after this trade. Okay, here it is. Here is why. Because if in this line, the bishop is on e7, right? That's why I did this, right? Now I'm threatening rook c8. If the king starts moving, I have bishop b5, rook c6, and then rook c7 in the end, and I begin collecting the tax pawns on the seventh rank. So this is why black needs to move the bishop out of the way with bishop of 6 first. It's once again, it's kind of the kind of thing that that's really hard to see during the time pressure. I'm pretty sure at this point my opponent was having only like about 4 to 5 minutes on his clock, and it was very hard for him to understand what's going on. He saw the correct plan. He just couldn't make it work the way it's supposed to. So here, this is it. This is how it's going to work. The position is not winnable for white. I would keep trying, but short story. What's the expression? Long story short, there you go. Bishop comes to a7, and I can't use my advantage. My only advantage is the pawn on a6, and it's not going anywhere. So bishop d6 happened. I played another bad move, because here I once again can just go ahead and play rook b1 threatening rook b8, and now d4 transposes into the position that I showed you guys before, where my pawn is taking care of the c5. Henceforth, black is unable to get the bishop to a7, so I just got to play bishop b7, a6, and go. Bishop b5, another mistake by me, and now here comes the last final mistake by black, where my opponent had the chance to still go for this, right? Bishop e5, and then trade comes in, and the bishop is essentially going to get to d4 on time, preventing me from promoting. This was the last chance, because after king e7, I just go ahead and play a6, right? There is no way for black to stop me. Bishop c5 now doesn't help, as there is d4 that pushes the bishop back. This is actually way worse, because I get to win the rook immediately, like so. So after a6, my opponent had nothing better to do other than just plant the rook on a7, and this is it. I got what I wanted. It doesn't matter that the bishop is in d4 now, because this is exactly what I was looking for. Right now the rook is dead. The game here we both were playing basically on increments. I think I still had about 5 minutes. My opponent was on increments. It's very pleasant to play this position for white, because I don't need to really do much immediately. I was kind of just trying to win time, kind of repeating moves back and forth at certain moments, but eventually I prepared the breakthrough, right? I prepared the breakthrough enough, and as you can see, this creates an opening for my king to squeeze itself through. So king e4. Now I'm preparing the d5, which eventually did happen. Once again, I took my time, because there's nothing black can do. The only thing black could do is black could have given up material by taking on a6, could have given up the exchange, but that obviously is going to lead to a losing endgame. So my opponent tried his best to maintain the material balance for as long as possible, but my king is gonna go and eat the rook. It took me a while. I was trying to avoid all the unpleasant checks, when eventually my opponent realized that it's his best chance to just go ahead and try to trade the rook for some sort of activity, until over here I think this was just kind of half desperation, because the opponent game is now winning, and my king will slowly force the black king away until I pick up the g5, pick up the f4, and the game ends. So my opponent, as a last resort, he tried to do something with a pass pawn, but eventually it's just an easy win for white here. So my opponent resigned in this position. They're eating the cats, they're eating the rooks. Yeah. Okay, yeah. All right. Okay. That wasn't me. That was the Michigan Eagle. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yes, thanks for entertaining us with your commentary today, Michigan Eagle. We really appreciate your support, your help. Yeah, just carrying the show tonight. But yeah, okay. Well, as I always do, I go completely off the rails with my time management when it comes to showing the games for these lectures. So my apologies. This is us going through 2 games out of 5 and running out of time. Great performance, Ilya. Good job. If I were to teach the kids classes like Dara and Nyzhnyk, I'm pretty sure I would fail miserably. So Dara and Nyzhnyk, the way they teach the kids classes is they have like eight examples, like very tough examples to go through, but they just machine gun through them and somehow it works out. And I would never be able to do that. But that's probably the right way. The more examples, the better. So my apologies, just 2 games today, but that's my take on prepare like a pro. Play good lines, but take your opponents out of their comfort zone with some unusual sideline ideas. Don't do it if the sidelines hurt you. If your opponent finds all the right moves and you get yourself into tough spot, please don't do that. I know, I know there are a lot of like weird gambits that where if your opponent doesn't know, you win the game quickly. But then if your opponent knows, then you're just down material in the long run. So I'm against those. I'm all for looking for unusual sideline ideas, but just something that doesn't involve sacrificing too much in case your opponent manages to find the best moves, or if your opponent just straight up knows what to do. So that was me, Illia Nyzhnyk. Thanks for watching. Prepare like a pro. Stay tuned for more of these. There are going to be more next week. I'm streaming every day on Simply Chess Club's Twitch channel at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. So, except for tomorrow, I guess. Every day except for tomorrow and except for the weekend. But on the weekend, there's going to be Puzzler's Paradise and Double Exclam. So if you guys are interested, you can stop by for those. Those are going to be on Sunday. With that said, I wish you all great rest of your day. Thanks for watching. See ya. One was that?